Welcome back to the Top Notch Documentaries YouTube channel. Today I'll be covering the case of the Stockton serial killer. Hope you enjoy. Saturday, October 15th, 2022. It was in the early morning hours that police stepped into gear as they witnessed their suspect, who was suspected in 5 shooting murders in the city of Stockton, California, exit his home and get into his car. They'd been conducting surveillance on the man and had grown familiar to his patterns. The suspect's patterns had worried the surveillance team, who observed the suspect drive into dark areas late at night and in the early morning hours, in what appeared to be hunting for victim type behaviour. Having acted on public tips, Stockton police had been investigating the possibility that this could be the active serial killer responsible for 6 shooting deaths from July 8th to September 27th of 2022. Stockton residents had been gripped by fear as men out in the evening and early morning hours were being ambushed by a masked gunman and shot to death. Some of the victims were homeless, and so they made easy targets for the killer, who had eluded the authorities for over a year. Sensing that their suspect may be out trolling for a lone male victim, police acted on their instincts to act quick, and they conducted a traffic stop on the suspect. The driver complied, and police immediately became concerned when they noticed that the suspect was covered from head to toe in black clothing, including wearing a black mask, which was attached to his neck. The driver, identified as 43-year-old Wesley Brownlee, was quickly taken into custody, given him being a prime suspect in an active serial killer investigation. Investigators snapped photos of his vehicle's interior, and a black and grey handgun can be seen. It would be later on that day that the announcement that an active serial killer allegedly responsible for 6 shooting murders and 1 attempted murder had finally been apprehended and taken into custody. The joint investigation included local, state and federal agencies, and everyone had been willing to help out to capture the killer, who didn't seem to be slowing down in his spree. The community was overjoyed to hear the news and could now breathe a sigh of relief, as it appears like the serial killer is now behind bars. However, for families of the victims, the pain of losing a loved one in such a sickening way is going to forever affect them to the end of their lives. Even though a suspect is now residing in the county jail, he is still just that, and is innocent until proven guilty. The announcement had come at the right time, as the case had suddenly gained more attention at the start of October, and the media storm raised more awareness leading up to this breaking news. Not long before this announcement, a suspect photo was released to the public, and it showed the suspect dressed entirely in black, walking. If it was indeed the serial killer, it demonstrates the lengths that he will go to in an attempt to avoid being caught. I'll now get into some of the known information of Wesley Brownlee. Brownlee is a long-time resident of Stockton, and his last known property is located just 2 miles from the 5 shooting locations. Brownlee has a criminal history, and his past convictions range from minor traffic infractions and citations to a DUI in 2008. Brownlee's most recent serious criminal charge was for a felony back in 2017. With 6 of the 7 victims being men, it's safe to say that the killer likely targeted victims of convenience, out on the street after dark. The vast majority were Hispanic, and each was killed in an ambush-styled attack in the early morning hours or late at night. 5 of the murders occurred in Stockton, with 1 of the murders having taken place in Oakland last year, and Oakland is a city roughly an hour's drive from Stockton. The first victim of the serial killer dated back to April 10th of 2021, and his name was Juan Vasquez Serrano, aged 39. Juan was shot to death in Oakland. He was described as a humble and well-liked man. He was homeless, and the neighbourhood residents often allowed him to sleep in the cars that he was fixing for the community. The ambush-style murder had taken place just after 4 AM, and little motive as to why Juan was targeted came out. That was until just a week later. 46-year-old Natasha Latour was nearly killed in a similar style shooting. Natasha is the only known female victim, and the only known victim who managed to survive. Natasha was living in a tent when the suspect attempted to take her life. Thankfully, Natasha rushed the attacker and managed to provide a description of him and details surrounding her terrifying ordeal. This description will likely aid in the prosecution of the alleged serial killer at his trial. Oakland is no stranger to shootings, as it is a hotspot for gang-related shootings and murders. But these shootings seem different to your typical gang activity. The motive of robbery wasn't present, and according to Natasha, the killer never even spoke to her. Both Juan and Natasha weren't gang affiliated, and neither had any known enemies. Just what was the motive for Juan's senseless murder and Natasha's attempted murder? Investigators didn't have much time to react to the shooting death of Juan and the attempted murder of Natasha. They theorised that the two shootings could be connected, but since no more shootings happened that could be linked to these two, the investigations into them quickly hit a dead end. It is entirely possible that following the failed attempted murder, the killer lost confidence and decided to lay low for a short time. It is entirely possible that the killer went elsewhere to commit his murders, which is exactly what transpired in the following year, 2022. Investigators would soon begin to understand just what they were dealing with, when on July 8th of 2022, a similar string of shooting-styled attacks began in Stockton. The first confirmed victim was Paul Yar, aged 35. He was described as having a big heart and being someone who was always there for you if you needed him. The subsequent killings took the lives of Salvador de Buddy Jr., who was ambushed outside of a Popeyes restaurant. Jonathan Hernandez Rodriguez, aged 21, was shot while sitting in a vehicle. Juan Cruz, aged 52, was shot close to an apartment complex, and Lawrence Lopez Sr., aged 54, is believed to be the final victim of this killer. Investigators had noticed the distinct similarities between the Stockton deaths and the death of Juan Serrano in Oakland. The connections between the victim profiles were evident, and the icing on the cake was the ballistic evidence, which came back as a match. The serial killer terrorising Stockton had indeed begun his spree in Oakland the previous year. Hundreds of tips had flooded into the serial killer tip line as families of the victims grew desperate for answers. The community came closer together in a bid to find the killer, and it would appear like the tips from the public led to Wesley Brownlee being put forth as a prime suspect. Prior to the alleged killer's arrest, a $125,000 reward had been offered, and the community had even created a Facebook group where information could be shared and exchanged. This group had close to 4,000 members, and police would make the comment that they were happy to see this group. Early on, many had theorised that this case bore an eerie resemblance to the case of the Chicago Rogers Park gunman, but detectives in this case deny a link between the cases. Wesley Brownlee now sits in the Stockton County Jail. The weapon found in his possession is currently being tested for comparison to these brutal murders. As of the time of this video, the investigation is still ongoing. Hopefully, families of the victims can find some closure knowing that an alleged suspect is locked up. These murders were senseless and carried out in a disturbing way, and the killer needs to be held accountable. This has been the video on the Stockton serial killer. As always, thank you for watching.